The Doctor Who's anniversary show was shown on the right day. Do you know this about the Five Doctors?
Well, no, tell us about
It was
that.
shown 2 days later. Because the children in need, and if you want to be really appalled, it was shown in America first. Yeah, that old show they just spoken for the American market the entire time. For the past 6 years, I couldn't stand that. Yeah, it was shown in America first on the 23rd. We got it 2 days. I'm still cross.
What you did achieve that the Five Doctors didn't is you got Tom Baker back.
Yes, well, in fairness, he'd been away for a bit longer. I mean, at the time, I was a member as a kid, as an adult, I was seething with resentment that he hadn't. But I suppose, in fairness, he'd only been away a short time. But though David came back, but, you know, David was more of a fanboy, so, and I knew him. So I could corner him in my living room and say, "Please."
And in the end, I mean, it ended up being. I mean, I say big budget. I mean, it wasn't a big budget in the scheme of things. If you were making a movie, which essentially this is, for the sort of the general sort of sci-fi movie market, you're talking 100 million plus, probably, aren't you, easily? And you made it. I don't mean, it's on record what this is made for.
That's it.
Are you able to share that with us?
I don't know. I've signed many pieces of paper which say I have to keep my secrets with the BBC. Suffice to say, it was not even close to that figure. And most of my grey hairs are a result of reading Stephen's scripts.
And this is money from BBC and money from BBC Worldwide, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you knew at the start that this was something that could be licensed and available in cinemas when you were writing it, or was that something that came later?
No, we knew from the start that we wanted to have cinema showings, but there was no extension of Mercy budget-wise to that was budgeted more or less like a normal Doctor Who, and it was 3D. It was in 3D.
Yeah, that was the only extra bit of budget we got was from the 3D fund.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was budgeted very similar to another one.
And from your point of view as a producer, was there anything that Stephen wanted to do that you just had to say, we just can't do it because we just can't afford it?
The memory's hazy. We tried for most things. I mean, the thing we always tried to do was if we applied the kind of criteria of if we'll only do it if we think we can do it well. And I think we were certainly pushing through the edge of the envelope on that one. But no, we tried for everything. And you know, all credit particularly to Nick Curran, the director, who was never afraid of anything that Stephen asked in the script. He would always go for it.
He would always keep the bits in we'd cut.
Yes.
He'd handwrite them on the back of the script.
Yeah.
The stuff we'd cut because we didn't have time to schedule it or budget.
Yeah.
And he'd write it all down and handwriting on the back of the script, so in case on the day he could sneak it in.
Yeah.
He was brilliant for that.
Yeah.
The truth is with the stuff that we cut from scripts, it would never be big spectacular stuff. We'd always, Marcus would always get that done. It'd be something else like, okay, that scene in a restaurant, could that just be in a small cupboard? That would be that. It'd be something you wouldn't notice. The cuts we'd make, not the big.
Because it's astonishing. I think when you watch it the first time, you're so kind of overwhelmed by the spectacle of it. You're not kind of, certainly I am not analysing it as I would do when you revisit something. But actually what does come across is how many different locations and time zones and different people at different, I mean, there's so much going on in this. I mean, special effects.
We found in Wales, very close to.
And the other thing, of course, is that as much as people who are kind of more, say, casual viewers of the show are going to be rewarded by watching this, there is a massive amount in there for the fans, isn't there? I mean, just so many kind of layers to it.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. The danger was, we were going to present a piece of television that people who didn't normally watch Doctor Who were going to watch. God help them. And loads of my friends were saying, who because they're rubbish, didn't watch Doctor Who, said, "Oh, I'm going to watch the 50th though," and I was thinking, God, luck. Playing a younger version of Matt Smith. Don't worry about it. But they all understood it fine, bizarrely enough. It's by far, I keep saying, the most complicated Doctor Who story ever told. Having to dig back into the plot again for the book version. It's mad. There is no correct order to tell that story.
I remember you saying at the time, just follow the Fez and it will all make sense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that actually applies.
It does. Do you know what? The one thing I don't often like what I do, but I never like what I do. But as I was watching it there, I was thinking, you know what? That Fez was clever. In, out, back again, so you know where all the doctors are. I thought that was. I liked the Fez. Yeah, that's gonna look great on the poster, isn't it? The Fez is quite good.
when you're writing this stuff, are you the kind of person who kind of has it all planned out with little, bits relating to everything else, or how do you plan it all out?
I always keep it in my head. I've got a superstition about never writing a plan down, because then you feel obliged to stick to it, and that can be the worst thing you do. But obviously with a story like that, I had to know an awful lot about how it was all going to look together at the end.
But you really kept that all upstairs?
Well, it's the only thing I was thinking about. It wasn't that hard. I mean, if you have a good idea, you remember it. If your idea wasn't any good, you will forget it. Memory is a great editor in that respect. So just keep it in your head. And
did you always know at some point that you would visit this war year, the war years that were referred to right from the start of Russell's kind of...
No, I absolutely thought we wouldn't do it. I thought that would just always be a set of increasingly insane references, all of Arcadia, Battle of Skullman, whatever nonsense we were coming up with. This week, you just sort of wrote in and giggled. I never thought we'd do it. But then I was struggling to think what we could do to bring all the Doctors together. I mean, in the past, in the old show, they'd had the Doctors coming together to tackle the greatest menace in the history of the universe. You think, well, look, we've done that. What could it be this time? And the idea of the Doctor uniting to save himself from the worst decision he'd ever taken, I thought was cool. And I thought it also gave us a real arc for the modern series. It was the story of the man who learned not to be the guy who pressed the button, which I thought I liked. I know that some people are really cross that we changed time, but if you really object to changing time, you've picked the wrong show.
You created this kind of mini episode with Paul McGann,
yes,
which we brought out before. So, but at one point, you were thinking that Paul McGann might be a more pivotal role in this actual story, and at one point you were talking to Christopher Eccleston as well.
Originally, and for quite a long time, we were hoping that Chris was going to do it. And that, I think, would have worked. I think Chris, being the sort of tough northern Doctor, witnessing the degrees of fey he was about to descend into, would have been quite funny. And that would have been a useful contrast. Once we didn't have him, we were, it was, my God, it was late in the day. The smoke was
we kept hoping, yeah.
What was it you think that made him not go through there?
You'd have to ask Chris, but it certainly wasn't any resentment or hatred or misery about the show. He could not have been kinder or more gracious. I met up with him twice. The first time he said, look, I'm only meeting up with you because I want to say to your face why I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do that through my agent or in an email. I want to talk to you and talk to you through it. But I talked very animatedly for an hour and a half, and he moved a bit closer, and I said, can I just have a go? Can I just have a go? And then another meeting, and he edged a bit closer, and then in the end, he couldn't. I don't think it wasn't, as I say, he was as kind and as generous about the show, and obviously still knew the show very well, was talking about Amy Pond and so on, but just, for whatever reason, and you'd have to ask him, didn't feel that was the right thing for him to do then.
Oh, here he is now. And obviously you ended up in the end with this kind of sort of conceit, I guess, which was completely not least because you've got the most amazing actor playing the role, but you created the kind of the War Doctor.
Well, that was a moment of, it was just terror. It was terror.
I remember the moment.
Was it that place? Was it Century?
Essentially, yeah.
I don't know what we can do. Yeah. We needed, first of all, another Doctor in the mix. Meant it had to be a Doctor who created a contrast. It had to be a Doctor that wasn't like the two we had, and I kept saying, and eventually we did it. Obviously, the William Hartnell Doctor steps in. That's a real contrast. Could we have done the Paul McGann Doctor? It never really came up at that stage, but he was the front runner or the forerunner of the romantic dashing Doctor. We've had 3 of them. They would have been waiting to the crowds. What we wanted was, the ideal for me was the idea that it would be someone who sort of voiced the old show, even though they weren't in it. So that he could be, the John Hurt Doctor, the voice of the past, saying, stop doing that with your screwdriver, it is patently ridiculous. So that he could do all that and could represent that. So you needed someone who was, an icon, someone who was famous in the era that Doctor Who was originally on and when Doctor Who was taken off the air. So someone who you would have wanted above all to play the Doctor. In your fondest dreams, you'd imagine this guy could be the Doctor. Someone who was already as iconic as the character of the Doctor automatically is, because they're only going to get that one shot. And we only had one there. we didn't have a backup.
It was the fantasy idea. It was like,
So we kept saying, well, if you could get John Hurt, that would be good. So that's what I suppose we should ask John Hurt. And it was over a weekend. And Anwen Hurt is here somewhere.
She's in the back over there.
Hello. It was actually Anwen who persuaded John, I think, to do it. Thank God, thank you. Because that saved the 50th. I didn't have another idea. Another idea was a glove puppet.
It's interesting, obviously, I know you've been very successful in terms of the kind of cast you've managed to attract to the show, but that's quite there's every possibility you might have said that.
Oh God, yes. Well, I mean, it was an astonishment to me that he said yes. I don't think, in terms of the kind of actor who'd be remotely appropriate to play Doctor Who, there isn't anyone grander and more magnificent. I mean, as you know, you're running this season of John Hurt films, and you look at all those iconic moments in cinema history. My God, one guy did all of that. So who else could it have been? There wasn't another option.
And what did he kind of bring to the role in terms of when he actually sort of arrived and
it was like having a living legend on set.
Mm.
I mean, we spent a lot of time wondering what Matt and David were going to be like with each other. Actually, all that went straight out the window because they were both just in awe. And they used to talk about how they'd be jumping around on set, acting their socks off, and then John would lift an eyebrow and they go, "Oh, that's how it's done."
And did you get a sense from him how he felt, and no disrespect to Stephen's line, but how he felt about delivering a lot of kind of very kind of complex sci-fi kind of lines?
He loved the script, and that was one of the things he talked about. He really enjoyed the writing. He would take a wee while with it because Matt and David were so used to the stuff. There were times when he'd go, "Sorry, what did you say? Do I say now?" But he was brilliant, and the thing is, John just brings utter conviction to everything he does. He gave a lovely speech when he finished, saying, "I've done these big movies. This is hard work. This is some of the toughest work I've ever done." And the crew just fell in love with him because he delivered every time. He was amazing.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And it sounds like, sort of from what Anwen has said as well, it meant the world to him, the idea of kind of becoming this kind of distant Doctor. He actually now is part of the pantheon of Doctor Who.
He was quite insistent. He was always asking, so I am actually Doctor Who. I'm not a pretend Doctor Who. And I just get to actually say, I am Doctor Who. Yeah, you are. You are definitely a real Doctor Who. And he only had to do 3 weeks in Cardiff.
And when you're showrunner of Doctor Who, and you're kind of custodian for the moment, and you're creating these either like a new Doctor effectively, or rewriting bits of the Doctor's history, so to speak, do you have kind of carte blanche to do that? Or is there anybody at the BBC saying, "No, you can't possibly do that, we wouldn't allow you to do that"? So,
no,
how does that work?
It's not that kind of job. I don't know quite why, because you're always asking, and I know Chris has been through the same, in effect saying, "Is that okay? Can I just do this?" "Yes, if you say so."
You say so. Whatever you like.
Come on, give me some feedback. I don't know. I'm just panicking. Well, the thing is, they leave Doctor Who alone to a great degree. I remember when we did back right at the beginning, that Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang, which were huge episodes, and Ben Stevenson came to the read through and said, "Oh, it's really good. I hadn't read it before now." And I'm thinking, we are spending all this money on this. And I haven't read it. Okay, fair enough. So no, they let you go on with it because and that's a very BBC approach. They appoint someone they think is going to make the right decisions, and off you go. Not in a welter of power and arrogance, but in a sort of, seriously, me, is no one going to check? Is no one going to mark my work?
And obviously, at the point when this was made, we knew that Matt was leaving, and obviously Peter had been already appointed, and there is that moment where you kind of see...
Do you know what I was thinking this morning, what we should have done? We should have cut Jodie's eyes into them. Awesome! I was so furious when I thought of that. I thought, a week ago we could have done it. We could have had her eyes. That would have been so great.
I remember when this point at this cinema, when we played it on that night, how when Peter's eyes come up, with already lots of cheers and excitement, but when his eyes came up, there was a massive kind of response to that moment, wasn't there?
Now you're just thinking, why is it a big close-up of Doctor Who's eyes? Why? That's just Doctor Who now.
Well, it's true now, but then it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was huge.
And from Matt's point of view, obviously he was kind of preparing his kind of exit from the show. Can you remember how he was at this point?
Well, what I particularly remember, at the point we were shooting this, he was on a massive crash diet for the film he was doing. So I was quite grumpy about the fact he couldn't eat properly during the shoot. But no, I think Matt, because he knew his days were numbered as the Doctor, he was kind of savour every moment. You know, by the end of it, he was like, did I make the right decision? Should I have gone? You know, he was on top form. He was enjoying it.
You were leaving in the same time frame.
Yeah. I was going. I think sometimes I look back at that and go, was that the time to go? But I'm glad that I went with Matt at the end.
Cheers, mate.
You burnt us out.
And you touched on obviously David Tennant coming back and being enthusiastic, but did he take some persuading, and then also about Tom as well? Just tell us about did you visit them in person, or how did that work?
How did it work? David I know very well, so I and he was often around the house. Like I was just sort of saying, will you come and do that? And obviously when you're around someone's house, you have to say yes and absolutely. But I think he'd always said, look, when it's time to come back and be the Doctor again, of course I will.
Yeah.
And Matt said the same thing. You know, they will just do that. They will, and they always will. I think it was a genuine thought for both Matt and David to stand opposite the face of the Doctor as far as they were concerned. Because David, as you know, is a big old fan. And had watched all of Matt's episodes, contrary, by the way, to what Peter Davison said recently. David has always watched Doctor Who. So he'd watched all of those, and so for him, Matt had become the Doctor, and of course for Matt, David was the Doctor.
Yeah.
So they had to stand opposite each other. And then when they sat in the read-through listening to each other, I remember hearing them saying afterwards, having this sort of, I can't remember the exact words, it was very funny, and it was a shame it wasn't caught on film. So Matt saying to Dave, is that how you do that kind of line? I've never hit that right. Oh, and they're sort of exchanging notes on how to talk absolute gobbledygook very fast.
And did you write the role of the creator before you kind of Tom Baker, or did it come the other way around?
At the beginning, I think a long time ago, that was, I think it was actually the other way around. I think there was some inquiry about whether we would be interested in Tom coming into it.
Which the answer was yes.
But I think this is terribly obvious, but no one's ever really spotted it. Originally, the moment would come back on at the end, Billy Piper's character, and talk to the Doctor and say, well, I think you made the right decision.
Yeah.
And you could argue that still happens. You can argue that's really the moment in a different disguise. We don't know. But that was originally what...
Do you know?
Do I know? No.
I
don't. I know. Even in the novelization, I'll make it absolutely clear that there is no clarity. Because I don't know what Chris is going to do in the future, right? So you can't commit to many things, otherwise you're containing the show. Obviously the heavy implication is this is an old retired version of the Doctor who's trying out his old faces again.
And did you have any concerns about the fact that of the previous Doctors, you'd taken Paul McGann, you'd brought in Tom Baker, but the other living Doctors went, they had the 5 more Doctors, whatever it was called, but they didn't make the appearance here properly.
Well, it was a difficult one. You can't, for a start, you can't get all of them. There is no possibility of doing the all Doctors,
no,
because some of them just don't return your call. Just so you can't. That's not possible. So it's going to be the sum of the Doctors. So which ones do you bring in? Some of them don't look at the Doctor anymore. I mean, they look magnificent and wonderful. They don't look at the Doctor anymore. We could do it. We could do that trick once, I thought, with the Tom Baker one, and he being the oldest and the furthest back in the series was obviously the person to come and visit the show. I didn't know what to do with the other living Doctors. I didn't want to. I mean, there comes a point where it just becomes a stunt. You know, you have them playing other little parts, showing up for being a traffic warden. That would just be annoying. You know, there's only so many Doctors, frankly, you can have on this show. The right answer is one. Trust me, they're very difficult to write. But when Peter Davison was talking to me at some BBC party, he said he wanted to do this fan film, just himself with his iPhone. He does that kind of thing. So I laughed about him and the other Doctors trying to get in the act. I said, no, I'll get that properly commissioned and we'll actually make it. So for me, that is their participation in the show. I don't see what's wrong with that. No. I mean, the 50th was several different shows. It was an adventure in space and time. It was the 5-ish Doctors. It was the day of the Doctor. It was the night of the Doctor.
But it is fair enough to say there were a few of them who were a little miffed, should we say, that they
were. I think they pretended to be miffed, to be absolutely honest. I don't know what. I mean, If you say anything at all of any nature to do with Doctor Who, understand that every single word you say will become a separate article on radiotimes.com. Sometimes 4 or 5 articles out of the same syllable. So trust me, I know all the doctors. They're all really nice guys. I saw them quite recently. They're all nice guys. No one's really left. No one's really upset.
And you brought back the Zygons, which was they were a real kind of fan favourite, hadn't been given an outing for many, many years. And what was your thinking about, obviously they had a very particular kind of set of constraints, shall we say, when they were in the Tom Baker era, and you brought them and updated them.
Well, I think we updated them the least of any.
Yeah, I think it was pretty fair. It was just doing it again with modern prosthetic technology, really.
Those originals were amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. I remember
Yeah.
Give me nightmares when I was a kid.
Yeah. We sort of looked at them and thought, well, there isn't anything to improve here.
Yeah.
It's superb. They deserved another outing, and to be absolutely candid, David Tennant really liked Zygons. So I brought the Zygons back for David, and he got to snuggle one. Can't say fairer than that. I'm just like a facilitator. Strange interests.
I'm going to see whether anybody's got a question for you in a moment, but before I do, just sort of as a sort of, now you have kind of walked away from the show, were there any of the kind of classic kind of creatures or characters that you wrestled with bringing back, you either couldn't make work or you just didn't end up doing?
No, not really. I mean, I wish I'd done more with the Autons. I thought Autons were brilliant. We should have had a good old Auton story. I think Chris should do a great Auton story. Not me, Chris, just you. But no, not especially. I mean, I raided the back catalogue fairly comprehensive. So, not especially. Until I suddenly think of one. The Garm, bring it back. I won't even scare your dog.
Okay, is there anybody, would anybody like to put their hand up if they'd like to ask questions? Question on the second row back here. Is there anybody else who's got another microphone over there? Anybody? And on the very, very, very back centre, we'll get the second question.
Thank you. Thanks. So, quite a few elements from the Day of the Doctor have sort of turned up later series. Obviously, the Zygon sort of two-parter, Heaven Sent and so forth. Were you sort of thinking, when writing Day of the Doctor, what consequences it's going to have in future seasons?
You were just trying to get it finished, weren't you?
I did. I already knew I wanted to do the story, the two-part Zygon story. I knew that idea came first. But then I thought, you know, originally the idea would be, and it would be a sort of sequel to Terror of the Zygons. What had happened to the Zygons after that? But then I thought, well, actually, if you bring them Day of the Doctor, I can make. So the whole thing about Osgood being in two Osgoods in Day of the Doctor, and Osgood getting killed in Death in Heaven, and then coming back as two of them. That was all planned through. The thing, you know, that I was landed with Gallifrey being back again. To me, I just find this funny. I just find it funny because if you watch the old show, you know the truth. He bloody hated the place, right? He left it. His entire motivation, his mission statement in life was not being on Gallifrey. That's his beginning. That's his origin story. It's like, okay, it's back. So eventually he comes back, and I thought, at the moment I thought that he'll find it and he'll immediately steal a TARDIS and run away because he doesn't like it.
There's a question right at the very back.
Hi, this is a question for Stephen. You mentioned that you had a couple of goes at trying to get Chris Eccleston into the story. If he had have accepted, and he was in it, would the story have changed quite dramatically to what it was, or would he have would it have been a similar story that you had with John Hurt's character in the Time War and so on?
It's basically the same story, because it's the story of the Doctor on the day he made the decision. In the original version, which, you know, it exists as 2/3 of the script, it was the Ninth Doctor, but the Ninth Doctor actually before we met him, not the Ninth Doctor with which we were familiar. The slightly manic aftermath of that. It would have been the Ninth Doctor the day before Rose, so to speak. So it would be slightly different, but it would have been essentially the same. because I would argue really quite strongly that the Doctor is the Doctor is the Doctor. So you play him. He's played by a different actor. I think by putting John into it, looking older, looking battle hardened, and with that extraordinary ability he had to give you grandeur and frailty in one look, it gave another dimension to it, I think, and it gave that sort of it made it special. But it would essentially have been that story. That was the story I pitched in the first place.
Thank you.
Okay, and you want to go down to the very front here, and on the aisle over there.
Hi there. First off, just want to love Day of the Doctor. It's kind of become my sort of go-to cheer up. It replaced the Five Doctors long ago. My question, and this may be balderdash that I read somewhere, was that at one point you were planning to revisit Peter Capaldi's moment in there. Was that something that you were planning and was dropped? Or?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I love to hear the word balderdash again. How things there. I will go to. I'll go to the limit of fan indulgence, but my God, having to try and explain to a general audience, and that's the other 100% of the audience, remember, why is the Doctor suddenly dashed a Gallifrey, stumbled into a close-up and only had his eyes in shot? That's too much. That would have been too much. At some point in Peter Capaldi's time, he got the call and dashed off and did that, but it's not a story. We've already seen that story, so unless maybe someone else could have thought of something, but I couldn't.
Okay, we've got the guy on the aisle there, and then after that we'll come through to the guy 3 rows further. Jack in there.
Hi, thanks. You said before the 50th wasn't just this; it was all the things that were put on in 2013, and we had Night of the Doctor, etc. Like that. With we had this, and then we had Doctor Who: The After Party.
Yeah.
One of the BFI's proudest moments.
How much was that? I'm not going to say imposed. Suggested on the Doctor Who production team that might be a thing you'd like to do, and how much impact did you?
I conceived and wrote it myself.
I'm so sorry.
Look, I don't know. I never really paid much attention to that. There was quite enough for us to do, making all the shows we were making. And I remember sitting about there and realising my son was sitting next to me and had watched the entirety of the 3D version of the Day of the Doctor with his glasses upside down. He was complaining of a headache. I was saying, that's bloody surprise, man. And then I just wanted to drink. I was so clenched by the time I finished. I just snapped a proctologist off at the knuckle. It was really... I was so retired. And then all I wanted was a drink. I wanted so much drink. I wanted to see if I could still feel any part of my body again. And they dragged me up and I sat down there next to John Hurt, one of the grandest and most important people I'd ever met in my life. He was being kind and lovely and gentle, and I was humiliated in front of some popular beat combo linked somewhere else. Tell you a sequel to that. I'd given away the punchline, but Sue and I were up late one night and we were watching something important and serious on television, and then realised there was a lists show on the other side, so we thought we'd watch that instead. I love list shows. And it was TV's most humiliating. So I said, can we watch that? That'll be brilliant. Turned it over, and I turned out literally to me doing that. Now, it wasn't part of my plan, but it gave people pleasure. It was funny. When do you get to see
Jackie Lane? We got to see Jackie Lane. That was amazing.
Oh, well, there you go. Everything you ever wanted.
Live from New York, we have One Direction. Okay, so
half of One Direction. Half Direction.
You got the microphone there.
The tiny look. Do you remember it? Oh, I didn't even know who they were.
Okay.
Hi guys, I'm not sure if I can speak for everyone, but that's probably like the 15th time I've seen The Day of the Doctor, not in a row. Slightly bonkers. But I don't know if I speak for everyone, but it's never looked more magnificent than it has on screen. Kudos to you, Stephen and Marcus, and to everyone who worked on the episode, but probably no one more so than John Hurt, of course. Stephen, a bit of sorry, I'm shaking a little bit, I hope you don't mind. My question is, it's to do with the Time Lords in you had the High Council of the Time Lords with Timothy Dalton as Rassilon and all of that going on.
Yeah.
And so I know that part of that would probably take place subsequently with all of that what's going on.
Yeah.
My question is, where did the idea for the War Council, with Ken Bones and that lot come from?
Well, I knew that upstairs, Timothy Dalton had another stupid plan, right? And that was going on simultaneously with the really stupid plan downstairs. So they say, let's drive Gallifrey to planet Earth and go, woo, oh, we're reversing. Oh, fuck me, we're in an oil painting. What kind of sordid day was that? I think we're in an art gallery. Shit. Didn't expect that this morning, did you? So what gave me the idea was just, well, you know, I was trying to make it into this seamless garment of continuity that Doctor Who has always been. No contradictions or mistakes anywhere. So I wanted to make sure. I think the timing's a bit off, but between you and me, it's all made up. So, not just that. They must have had a war room, mustn't they?
Yeah.
They couldn't just have had bonkers people in stupid hats. Actually, I'm saying that about Doctor Who. You can always have bonkers people.
The question in the very, very front row here, and then I want to make sure there's another very, very, very centre back row, a bit further on to the last one. So yeah.
Thanks. Quite simply, if Chris Chibnall asked you to come back and write a few episodes, would you?
Well, he has, and I haven't. So that would be. I mean, look. No, here's the reality. That I've been. I realise I'm still writing this book at the moment, but I've written an awful lot of Doctor Who. An awful lot. I think I've probably got the record in terms of the television stuff, in terms of minutes. So two things. One, I do want to go and do other things. He said, not quite finishing Day of the Doctor yet at this panel. So I certainly want to leave it alone for quite a long while. But also, it's really important for Chris to have his own vision and to move ahead on his version of Doctor Who. You can't imagine if I was looming around the place saying, Chris, can I do that bit? Can I just do, you know, I used to be boss here. Could I have that bit? No, you can't. You gotta let them get on with it. So I think in the short term, and the short term is very long outcomes. And I'd never rule anything out because I do love it very much. But I've probably written enough of Doctor Who, and Doctor Who's probably had enough out of me. So anyway.
Never.
We've got the question right at the very, very back there.
Yeah, this is for it's two questions to Stephen. Oh, and one thing, in 2015, you sent me a Christmas card from the Doctor Who Festival, so I just want to say thank you so much for that. Two things. So,
not 2016 or 2017.
Yeah. There was a moment of fraudeur. What can I tell you?
So I just want to ask, two things. Are you ever considering doing a book similar to how Russell did it with his The Writer's Tale, ever at some point in the future? And also, I know you wanted to sort of put the posters in of the Cushing movies in the Black Archive. Have you passed that idea on to Chris Chibnall at all? Is there like a sort of little plan in the future?
I think if you read the book, you might find it's in there. For those of you who don't know what the joke was, there's a line in there where Kate Lethbridge is leading Clara through the Black Archive, and she talks about public knowledge about the Doctor and the TARDIS can have disastrous consequences. And she wasn't meant to be looking at the vortex manipulator. She's meant to turn and show the two posters, Doctor Who, the Dalek and Daleks. And we hold on them, and then we go back to the real plot. So I'm delighted. I mean, we couldn't get the rights to the posters.
Yeah, clearance, yeah.
Doctor Who didn't get clearance for Doctor Who. So that had to go. Sorry, but it's back. But I like the idea that the Doctor Who movies are inside Doctor Who itself, because I know the Doctor would absolutely love those movies. He would think they were awesome. And he loved being Peter Cushing and all that. He'd think they were improvements, he really would. He'd write fan letters in. What was the other question, sorry?
Oh, the other question was just, would you ever do a book similar to Russell T Davies on the Writer's Tale thing?
The Writer's Tale, which if anyone's interested in writing in general and Doctor Who in particular, a wonderful, wonderful book. You should absolutely go and get it. It's fantastic. But one of its particular qualities, it was written during the process. I mean, he was writing scripts and sending stuff in, and in the midst of that, so I can't do that now. And anyway, the book already exists. It would just be like a cheap recast. You know, like that sequel when you can't get the star back. It would be that. See, you don't want that. I'd be like the second Travis in Blake 7. You know? Wouldn't feel like Ben.
We have time for 2 more questions. The last 2 questions, there's a hand up just over here, which is the 5th row back, and there's another one on the back there. And we'll make it through to go for the final one. We'll be down on the aisle here. Yeah. Just come. Do you want to keep your hand up? Yeah, just coming to you now.
Hi there. I was just wondering, as creative people in the industry, what's it like to see your work that came from just ideas in your head to its effect on all the fans that you see before you?
It's the best bit, actually. After all the work and everything you do there, to see an audience watch it and enjoy it, it's the best bit. It's the kind of reward for all the late nights spent in the rain in a field in Cardiff.
I think probably you don't know what you've made until you hear an audience react to it, is the truth. I imagine just that everybody here has seen it before, but the first time we sat in here, when all the doctors flew in and there was a huge round of applause, and in the last 15 minutes of it, there was just reactions all the time. And I remember Mark Gatiss told me, that there was a man just sitting in front of him who was having the best time of his life. He was just, you know, oh, this is fantastic, this is fantastic. And then when he heard Tom Baker's voice saying, you know, I really think you might, he just went, oh, I can't take it. It was too much joy. And that is the best bit.
Is there anybody here at all who had never seen that before, in any shape or form?
Dear God. All right.
So there was, well, yeah, probably actually
What did you
one.
think you were going to see? Man for all seasons, are you disappointed?
Okay, so the last 2 questions, there was one further back, and then the last one will be on the second row back here.
Is it? I was just wondering, how much involvement did you have in the casting of Jodie Whittaker?
Me? Sorry, I can't see where you are. Oh, sorry. I had absolutely no involvement whatsoever. I didn't know that it was Jodie until 2 days before you did. I knew that a doctor had been cast, but my rule was that I didn't want to know before Peter Capaldi knew. I thought that was a rule. So I said, until he actually knows, I can't be told. So I was the second phone call that Chris made that day. So no, I didn't have, I mean, I've seen what you've seen, and I think, and I've met her. I met her for the first and only time a few weeks ago. And I said, I mean, I absolutely get what Chris has seen there. You know, the energy, the sort of mischief. She's very funny. She's a very funny lady. And I was wondering when she was first announced, I thought, brilliant actress, brilliant, but is she a bit serious? Because Doctor Who has to be funny, and she is. So I can take absolutely zero credit for most good things in life, but it was not entirely Chris.
Before we go to the final question, I've just got something to say, which is that next month, February, we are running a Warris Hussain season here at the BFI, looking at all of Warris's films and TV. He'll be here in person on stage on February the 6th. Thank you, Dick. I've done that, so hopefully we'll see you then. And the final question over here.
Thanks a lot. Stephen, you said that Doctor Who has always been like the little show that could, and you had free reign to do whatever it was. And it seemed with season 10, you sort of got to indulge yourself and do what you wanted to do to give Peter a great send-off. Was there a point you ever sort of reached a self-control where you said, I can't do that, no way am I going to get away with this, or are they going to let me do this? And you thought, oh no, I'll pull back and I won't do that?
You just saw that. No, I don't think you can make Doctor Who with a sense of restraint. Doctor Who isn't about restraint. Doctor Who is in your face, entertaining all the time. You know, if we could work out how to do a musical number, it'd be in there. Dancing puppies, in there. It's in your face entertainment. So no, it is. Its mission statement is not to be. I'm always saying in tone meetings to everyone's great despair is we are not at home to Mr. Subtlety. We're leaping out that television and we're doing every single damn thing we can think of to get your attention. That's how that show works. So no, I didn't ever really think in those terms. I mean, and I didn't really think that way in the way you're talking about in series 10. I never really thought about leaving. I just thought there's too much to do. You know, you're too busy. You don't think about this being the last time. You think, am I going to survive to the end of this? So I just tried to make good Doctor Who's right up until the very last second when they threw me in the skip and set me alive.
It's been really great to revisit this so soon and after it. You know, after
years, man. 5 years.
In the scheme of things, we're looking at things 50 years ago. It's pretty, but yes, it's 5 years. A huge thank you to both Marcus Wilson and Stephen Moffat for being here. Thank you very much.